Hey, I'm Matt Hines here with DevOps TV for DevOps.com at the DOES 16 conference. We're joined by David Habershon from the Ministry of Social Development in the fine country of New Zealand. David, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And as I understand it, you're here to talk about the DevOps transformation that the ministry has been undertaking, and we're really interested to hear about how that's playing out.
Yeah, certainly. It's very young. We've only been doing it since March, but the extent to which we have changed our model for IT delivery has been quite exceptional. So in March of this year, we were doing waterfall. Basically, we had Kanban waterfall and Scrum waterfall and traditional waterfall, but basically everything we did was big deploys right at the end of projects.
Sure.
And now we're releasing on a 6-weekly cycle, and we've had 4 of those releases, and they've all gone very well with a dramatic improvement in quality.
Cool.
So in a very short space of time, and not even with any tooling. So it's been very much focused on people and process, bringing the dev teams and the ops teams together to figure out how we speed up, get faster time to value, and that's worked extremely well. The teams have worked this out for themselves, and they've been motivated, I think, because we had a project that went a bit wrong back in March. It burned a lot of people out. We got it over the line and it went live, but there was wreckage in terms of quality, so it disrupted the front line, but it was very, very taxing on the IT folk, and so they were motivated not to go back to that, and we just set a direction. We're going to 6-weekly releases now. We're gonna have a DevOps approach, a DevOps mentality. So it was a philosophical change, a cultural change, as much as anything. And the teams are figuring this out for themselves. So the pace at which that's been achieved, I think, is quite remarkable. Obviously, we want to go to, if we could, if the business was amenable, go to daily releases or faster. That's the North Star, and that's what we're gearing towards. So having achieved this change, quite a radical change in a short space of time, that's a really good solid foundation for moving forward. And it's going to be more and more emphasis, continuing the emphasis on the culture, the sharing, the collaboration, the experimentation, the agile thinking as a way of governing things. And but we need to now start, if we want to go faster, we want to go from 6 weeks to 4 weeks and faster, we need more automation, more continuous integration, continuous testing and continuous deployment and those sorts of things. So we've got a long way to go, but we've made a really good start, I think. And maintaining that cultural journey is going to be the most important part, I think.
Yeah, fascinating. What a purist's view. This is how it's supposed to work, right? You just do it and succeed. Now, so it begs the question. I mean, did you just hand out the Phoenix project to everybody, or how'd you do it?
No, we had been thinking about DevOps for a while, but that damaging project was a real catalyst. That
pain and suffering helps.
That was and there's a saying, don't waste a perfectly good crisis.
Right.
So that was the time to strike and say, well, actually we can analyse this to death. We can prepare everybody, or we just do it. We just start and we learn by doing. So by adopting that approach, it was just a forced. Everyone had to come in and start doing it, and we did bring in some experts in DevOps. We had our own guys that were very literate in DevOps and scaled agile, and we used the talent that we had. But basically, nobody was outside that. Everyone had a relevant role in the ops side or the dev side. They did come together to make the 6-weekly cycles work, and also the business. The business was fantastic. They on their transformation program, they wanted to have a more agile approach, so it dovetailed with DevOps really well.
So what hurt? Right. It sounds like you had a very greenfield and encouraging opportunity given what had just transpired, but and you've had a lot of success. What was the hardest part?
The hardest part was just getting the first release out, because it really was, how are we going to do this? But once people really engaged with the problem, they started to solve it really well. There were people that weren't convinced, But I think in hindsight, looking back over the way that we did do things, that you had a dev tribe and an ops tribe. I think they figured out that working collaboratively was a far better way of doing it. So there were some, there was just the initial figuring out, but I think, and also probably the fact that we don't have a lot of tools, which is going to be our next investment, I think, is getting better tools that help us deploy faster, do the continuous integration and so on. So we've got rudimentary tools at the moment, but it just shows what you can do with people and process and culture.
Sure.
So and that the journey's by no means, but that's the great thing about DevOps, because nobody comes in and says with a score sheet and goes, no, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, you're not doing this. Therefore, you're not attempting DevOps. Your own flavour can be what it is. And it fits your environment, and it's a philosophy. It's about continuously improving, about evening out flows, making sure that the constraints in your system are resolved so that the whole flow goes better. So there's no right or wrong answer. There's a set of outcomes that you're trying to achieve. So that's what I think is really attractive.
It's funny, we had a conversation in here yesterday with a company that provides services around DevOps to some federal agencies here in the United States.
Yeah.
And you and I were speaking before we got on camera here, and you were talking about how actually your background, you've been in a lot of different industries, financial services, I think you cited, now government. What are some of the you did know that governments are not all snowflakes, right? That there is some commonality. What are some of the intricacies, or even some of the commonalities? What are the challenges, I guess, or opportunities of being in a government domain in terms of DevOps transformation?
There's, all organisations have got bureaucracy, and government organisations are no exception. But I think one of the features of government is the funding model.
Sure.
And you in order to commence a project, you have to do a business case, and you get a dollop of money to achieve a certain outcome, and it goes live on a certain date. And the authorising environment is geared around the project as a unit of measure. And of course, in DevOps, the concept of project goes away, and product takes over.
Sure.
Now you can make that work. But it's difficult, and it's so enshrined into the thinking. It's so enshrined into the systems and processes. So you have to adapt it, and part of the role of project managers, they might do different things to traditional project managers, is to still articulate what was done, what features were delivered for the money that was invested. Making sure that the value of the asset is correctly capitalised and those sorts of things. So it can be done, but I don't think we're going to change, or government's going to change anytime soon, the notion that a project is how you get things done rather than managing a product. But we'll see. I think eventually we'll get there.
Agile government. There's some interesting people spearheading the industry, or spearheading the DevOps movement, who have gotten involved in some of that, right?
Well, and as DevOps becomes mainstream, which it must do because it makes so much sense, I think governments will participate more and more. There's
some unique opportunities there too, right?
Yeah.
One last question before we go. Customer experience is, we've said in other conversations here, the ultimate arbiter of whether or not you're succeeding, how you're succeeding with DevOps. How do you measure customer experience improvement? Again, the outcome of everything you're doing in DevOps in terms of the business deliverable.
Well, it's not something I'm measuring particularly well, to be fair. User experience is absolutely key. And you can have the richest functionality in the world, but if it doesn't work, you can't access it, it won't start, it's too slow, then it just doesn't fit the bill. So we're putting a lot of time into non-functional requirements in terms of, whatever we put out there has to be fast, it has to be highly available, and so that people can actually use it. It's simple to use and those sorts of things. So performance is something you can measure, and it's such a big part of the user experience.
Right.
So that's where we're starting. We do surveys and those sorts of things, but we need to systematise that. So that we understand better with tooling what the customer experience is. As I said, just starting with how is the system actually performing.
Right. Well, again, start with culture.
Yeah.
Something like a survey, right, and drive towards some of the automation. And I think that is one of the themes here this year, is that things are evolving and tooling and looking at tooling has become a bigger part of the equation. But we'll be interested. Hopefully, you'll come back in subsequent years and talk to us and tell us how again the Department of Social Development in New Zealand is progressing with DevOps. It's a great story. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
David Habershon joining us here on DevOps TV for DevOps.com at the DOES 16 conference. Thanks for joining us.